All right, we are live. We're live right here on X. We're live on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. We're live on Facebook. We're live on Rumble. It is good to see you all. Welcome to another episode of The Liz Wheeler Show. I'm your host, Liz Wheeler. If you could take a moment before we get started on today's episode and subscribe to the show, I would greatly appreciate you, even more than I already do. Go to Spotify, search The Liz Wheeler Show, hit subscribe, leave me a 5-star review. On YouTube, make sure you're subscribed, but also hit that notification bell so that you know when we go live and you can sit with us while we're here chatting together about the things that matter. You can drop comments in the live chat. Actually, that's a note I want to make for this episode. If you have comments and questions, drop them in the live chat on YouTube because we're going to try to get to them at the end of the episode. So go ahead and start making your comments and questions. Show up over there right now. I have a story for you to start the show. A story. I went on Chris Cuomo's television show last night. He has a show on News Nation. I think it's at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And he asked me to come on a show pretty often. And I actually greatly enjoy going on his show. He's a good, fun debater. We don't agree on a lot, but we have, I would say, similar debating styles. So there's a good back and forth when we get to talk about issues that matter. And last night, when he asked, can you come on my show? I said yes. He had asked because I had a tweet that went, or a post on X, I should say, that went viral. It was this post. I said, if you go to the New York Times website and you search for George Floyd, the search engine populates 5,897 articles that mention George Floyd. If you search for Trayvon Martin, the New York Times has 1,190 articles. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland dad, 56 articles from the New York Times about him. If you search for Daniel Penny's name, 100 articles. But if you search for Irina Zarutska, the Ukrainian woman who was brutally murdered on the bus in Charlotte, North Carolina by the deranged black man with schizophrenia, the New York Times wrote 0 articles. And my post said the New York Times is propaganda and shows. I posted a screenshot. That was me on the app, the New York Times app. You can see I don't subscribe to the New York Times. You can see that there are 0 results for Irina Zarutska's name. And this post on X went wildly viral. It was seen over 19.3 million times. That's a lot of eyeballs all around the world. Elon Musk reposted it, which I greatly appreciate. Thank you for that post. The point that I was making, I think, was it's not just interesting to read, it's very important. The New York Times, we know the New York Times is propaganda. We don't trust the mainstream media, you and I. That's why we're sitting here together. But it is always very, well, both illustrative, but also chilling when you recognize that the mainstream media, like the New York Times, serves at the pleasure of the Democratic Party. When they speak, it's because Democrats want them to speak. And when they're silent, it's because Democrats want them to hide something. That was the point of my tweet. So Chris Cuomo asked me to come on on his show last night because he said he wanted me to debate the fix. You look at the footage of Irina Zarutska being murdered on this bus by this deranged black man. And he said, this happens too often, these horrible crimes in our cities. How do we fix this versus just covering this on the news? So I said, yes, I'm going to come on your show. We'll have a great debate. He said, I have a former Democratic representative who's going to be on the show too, on this panel with you. The two of you are going to debate. And I said, great. I actually didn't have time to look up who it was before the show. It turns out it was Nina Turner. She's a Democratic socialist, a former Ohio State senator. But I had 2 points I wanted to make before the show. 2 points I wanted to make when I was on with Chris Cuomo. The 2 points that I wanted to make is I wanted to say that Irina Zarutska's murder was not arbitrary. It was not inevitable. It was the result of Democrat policies, specifically Democrat policies that encourage, incentivize, or otherwise create so-called racial equity in our criminal justice system. And the second point that I wanted to make is that this epidemic of crime that we see, especially crime committed by young black men, although it also applies to crime committed by young white men, is a result of broken families, a broken nuclear family. In this particular case, the broken black nuclear family. Now, that point in particular resulted in a super viral video on social media after we were live on TV because the Democrat socialist that I was debating absolutely freaked out at me when I made that point. This is what she said. Take a look. Is the brokenness of the nuclear family, the brokenness of the black family, the fact that black fathers are absent, that young black men turn to drugs and gangs.
How dare
and by the way,
well, the
this
family,
is also
I
true
think the
for
family
the
in
young
general
white
you
men
can point to. I don't know that
Minnesota.
one race over the other works.
This is also true for the murderer who killed the 2 young children, a white man. Will you listen to what I'm saying? I literally said the broken nuclear family, both black families and white families. That murderer.
You singled out black families, but if you're saying all families, it's a different point.
It's especially evident in the black community, but it is also true that when fathers are absent, that young men are more likely to commit.
I'll put you guys on a text thread.
Put us together.
I'll put you.
If you're open to that, Liz, I'm open to it.
I'll put you together. Liz is open to conversation.
Let's do it.
Nina's open to conversation. That's why we're all here. It's not an easy conversation to have, but it's an important conversation to have. We'll keep having it. Liz, thank you for being here. Nina, appreciate you. I'll put you guys together right after the show. All right?
Please do.
I will. 4 minutes.
Okay, how dare you, she says. She sounds like Greta Thunberg. The nerve of you. Here's the thing. I did not think that the comment that I made, this wasn't even a spicy comment. This point that I made about the brokenness of the nuclear family, yes, the black family, specifically also the white family, this is not controversial. I didn't think until that moment. I mean, even Barack Obama spoke about the brokenness of the black family and the fact that fatherlessness, when children are raised without a present father, this leads to drastic increases in the number of crimes that they commit. Take a listen to this.
But if we're honest with ourselves, we'll admit that too many fathers are also missing. Too many fathers are MIA. Too many fathers are AWOL, missing from too many lives and too many homes. They've abandoned their responsibilities. They're acting like boys instead of men. And the foundations of our family have suffered because of it. You and I know this is true everywhere, but nowhere is it more true than in the African American community. We know that more than half of all black children live in single-parent households. Half. A number that's doubled since we were children. We know the statistics that children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime. They're 9 times more likely to drop out of school. 20 times more likely to end up in prison. They're more likely to have behavioral problems or run away from home or become teen parents because the father wasn't in the home. The foundations of our community and our country are weaker because of this.
Who is that man? Who is that man? Barack Obama sounds more conservative than most conservative commentators I know. And funny, I didn't hear in the background Nina Turner screeching, "How dare you?" and the nerve of you when Barack Obama made these exact same points. Here's the thing. The black family, the breakdown of the black family, these are the statistics. In 1960, 75% of black children lived with 2 parents. And that's 1960. Fast forward to 2020, and the number of black children who live with 2 parents has been reduced to between 37 and 42%. That means less than half of black children now live with married parents compared to in 1960. That's a significant drop. In 1965, 25% of black babies were born out of wedlock. Fast forward to 2015, and 77.3% of black babies are born out of wedlock. That's 3 times the number as 1965. That means that by age 9, over 50% of black children who were born to unmarried parents experience a parental breakup. And we know the implications of a parental breakup on the psychological, the social, even the physical, the mental health of young children. Compared to black children who live with married parents, only 20% of them by age 9 experience this breakup. So more than double the number of black children who are living with unmarried parents experience this trauma compared to black children living with married parents. In 1960, think about just marriage rates for a second. In 1960, 60% of black adults were married. That's a similar rate to the number of white adults who were married at the time, or the percentage of white adults. But you fast forward to 2016 and only 29% of black adults were married. This is half the number as compared to 1960, and it's significantly lower than the rate of marriage for other Americans. 48% of American adults overall are married as of 2016. You can see this is a significant decline in all of the factors that make up a strong nuclear family, particularly a strong black nuclear family, right? marriage rates, the number of children who are born out of wedlock, the number of children that are living in single-family homes. This is a drastic, significant, traumatic difference. And as I said on Chris Cuomo's show, it's also true of white families. There's been a significant breakdown in the white nuclear family. It's not as significant numerically as the breakdown of the black family, but for white families in 1960, 87% of white children lived with two parents. Fast forward to 2020, 74% of white children lived with two parents. So there's been a 15% decline there for white families, but that's not nearly as significant as the decline for black families. White children today are more than twice as likely to live with married parents compared to black children. In 1965, just 4% of white children were born out of wedlock, compared to 2015, 29% of white children are born out of wedlock. And the marriage rates for white people in 1960, 74% of white adults were married. Fast forward to 2023, and only 53% of white adults are married. Now, again, this is a breakdown of the white nuclear family, and it's bad, and the implications on society are evident, and they're not good, and we should address this. But it's also perfectly fair and accurate to note, to state that the brokenness of the black family has been more drastic and more severe than the brokenness of the white nuclear family. That's just a fact. That's just a statistic. As I said, it's not actually that spicy. It's not actually that controversial. I kind of thought it was common knowledge, given the fact that Barack Obama once made a speech about it. Father-absent households are one of the strongest indicators of whether a child will grow up to be a criminal or not. And these statistics are quite startling. For white children, this is statistics from 2023, 20% of white children live in homes without a father. 50% of black children live in homes without a father, and 29% of Hispanic children live in homes without a father. So more than double the number of black children live in fatherless homes compared to white children. Again, it's bad that 2 out of 10 white children, 1 out of 5 white children live without a father. It's very, very bad that half of black children live without a father. Of course that has societal impacts. Of course it does. And statistics show this. This is not something that hasn't been studied. This is not a new opinion that I'm bringing to the forefront, something that, has not yet been discussed and investigated. No, 63% of youth suicide victims are from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless and runaway children come from fatherless homes. Think about that for a second. Conceptualize that one. Out of all these children, 9 out of 10 homeless and runaway children don't have fathers who are present in their home. 70% of children, juveniles under the age of 18, who are in either state-operated institutions, the number increases to 85% of children under the age of 18 who are in prisons come from fatherless homes. So if you are a child who commits a crime, you are much more likely than not to come from a fatherless home. 80% of rapists come from fatherless homes. Fatherless children are 6 times more likely to live in poverty and commit criminal acts compared to children raised in dual-parent households. Approximately 85% of children with behavioral disorders have been raised in fatherless homes. That is 20 times the national percentage. If you want to fix the violence problem that we are experiencing in our country, yes, there is a role for law enforcement. There is a role for political policy. But really, truly, if we want to fix this, you have to start with the black family. That was the point that I was making on Chris Cuomo's show last night. It's weird to me, or is it, that our opposition, meaning the left, whether they're regular old liberals, whether they're Democrats, whether they're socialists like this woman, it is weird to me that she would sit there and talk about, we're looking for the fix. The system has failed. Well, yes, it has. But the way that the system has failed these black children is by allowing the degradation of the black family, encouraging the degradation of the black family, incentivizing the degradation of the black family. So yes, if we want to fix this problem, if we want to look at what systems have failed and why, that means looking at government policies that harm the black family or incentivize the brokenness of the black family and the absence of black fathers. Didn't think this was that controversial of a point to make, but apparently it is. And I think I know the reason why. We'll get to that in just a second. But the other point that I made to Chris Cuomo last night was about the systemic racism that is in our criminal justice system. And you may be surprised to hear me say that because it's usually leftists who are like, oh, our police system and our jails are systemically racist. They're a white supremacist organization and they're systemically biased against black people. That is not what I mean when I say there is systemic racism in our criminal justice system. What I mean is that there is systemic racism in our criminal justice system aimed at white people. This is the point I made to Chris. Take a look.
Let's talk about why this has become such a hot button topic and why you use the word weaponized. I think it is a hot button topic because it demonstrates how politics have led to this situation. This was not an arbitrary crime. This was not a crime that was inevitable. It's not like Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker says you can expect crime in big cities. No, I don't accept that. The majority of the American people don't accept that. What we saw here in this gruesome, heinous murder of this beautiful, innocent Ukrainian war refugee by this deranged black man, we saw the Democrat Party's policies in action. In the state of North Carolina in 2020, in June of 2020, the governor, Roy Cooper, signed an executive order, Executive Order 145, called Racial Equity in Criminal Justice Task Force. It established a task force with the intent of reducing the percentage of black men who are incarcerated compared to the percentage of white men who are incarcerated. This is not how you fix a problem. This is nothing but racialism that results in black people who commit crimes being let off easy in order to tamper with the statistics and make it seem like there's less of a disproportionate difference between the number of black men in prison and the number of white men in prison.
You do
the result of this,
you do know, not to be in like a numbers festival, and I want to bring in Nina, but as a cultural dynamic, black men and white men are arrested about the same rates, but then the rate of black arrests go up when you get into certain types of crimes. The percentage of people who get prosecuted is disproportionate in terms of black people, specifically young men, and the amount of people who go to prison and do time is disproportionate. But I don't think that's what this is about. I think this is about who wants to see what the problem is.
Okay, let's stop right there for a second. Just pause it right there for a second. So, first of all, the numbers festival that Chris discusses is counterpoint to my bringing to his attention that the then governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, signed that executive order establishing a racial equity in criminal justice task force, which is essentially, as I said, it's racialism. It's not preventing crimes that are committed by black men from being committed. It's not addressing the root cause. It's just fudging the numbers to make it look like fewer black men are in prison percentage-wise, because right now, you know, their favorite word is a disproportionate number of black men, or a disproportionate percentage of black men are in prison. Well, the problem is not that a disproportionate number of black men are in prison. The problem is that a disproportionate number of black men commit these crimes. So when you're listening to a leftist talk or engaging with a leftist, make sure that that is clear. It's not that it's a problem if there is a higher percentage of black people in prison than white people. The problem is that a higher percentage of black people commit crimes. And that's what we should be asking about. Why is that? Why is that? Now, Chris engaged in his numbers festival that he talked about, because the way that these shows are produced is they have a producer call you and you tell the producer ahead of time what your talking points are going to be, what point you're going to make, so that they can kind of structure the conversation. So I gave them my talking points beforehand. I'm always very forthcoming with my talking points because I'm not trying to hide anything. I don't want to surprise them with a point that I make. I want them actually to give me your best comeback. Like, let's have this real debate. Let's not fake it. So I gave them my talking points beforehand. So obviously he had prepped that answer so he could regurgitate those facts, so he didn't have to address the Racial Equity and Criminal Justice Task Force codifying racialism into our system, leading to, in North Carolina specifically, a 40% increase in homicides across the state in the year following the establishment of that Racial Equity and Criminal Justice Task Force. You really can't answer that, can you? You can't answer that unless you want to say, yep, they did wrong. The Democrats should be held accountable for that, or you have to avoid it. One more point to make about the disproportionate numbers. So when someone like Chris, and I like Chris, obviously I enjoy debating him, I have fun on these shows. When he talks about these disproportionate numbers of black men being arrested compared to white men, he doesn't complete the thought. So what's the insinuation? What's the insinuation of bringing that up? Is the insinuation that there's more black men arrested than white men because police are racist and just pick up innocent black men because they're black? Like, what point are you trying to make? He said something about, the same number of black men and white men are arrested, but then black men are prosecuted in higher numbers than the white men. Well, again, what point are you trying to make? Are you trying to say that white men who actually committed crimes are let off easy because they're white, or that black men who were arrested but didn't commit the crimes are, maybe they're innocent, not guilty, that they are prosecuted because they're black? You got to complete that thought, because when you leave it hanging, you're making it seem like it's a comeback, but I'm not sure what point you're trying to make other than insinuating that there is a problem just based on that word, that disproportionate number. But that disproportionate narrative doesn't tell the story unless you go one step further back. It's not that it's a problem that there's a disproportionate number of black men in prison compared to white men. The problem is that a disproportionate number of black men commit crimes compared to white men. And that conversation, it seems that the left doesn't want to have. They don't want to talk about the root causes of this. Instead, Nina Turner, this Democratic socialist, and again, we'll get into the socialist part of her ideology in a minute because that probably informs what she was saying. She claimed that what happened to Irina Zarutska on the bus in Charlotte, being murdered by DeCarlos Brown Jr., this deranged black man who stabbed her in the neck with a knife until she died. She claimed that this was not about race. However, a new video has surfaced that proves Nina Turner wrong. I'm going to show you that in just a second, but I want to give a shout out first to our sponsor for today's episode. That would be All Family Pharmacy. Are you tired of doctors telling you no? Are you having a hard time getting prescriptions for affordable but off-patent medications because insurance won't cover what actually works for you? Well, if I've just described you aren't alone, and millions of other Americans are frustrated with our broken healthcare system because it's not just broken, it's corrupt. Well, All Family Pharmacy is your alternative. All Family Pharmacy is a patient-first, independent pharmacy. They connect you with licensed U.S. doctors who approve your prescriptions online, fast and legally. So there's no gatekeeping. There's no insurance middlemen. There's no red tape. They offer affordable, high-demand medications that are often hard to access, usually for political reasons. Ivermectin, for example, at All Family Pharmacy, you can get ivermectin starting at just $2. Mebendazole, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, NAD, you name it, they have it. Over 200 different medication options. It's super easy. You order online. It takes just a couple minutes. A licensed doctor then reviews and approves your prescription. Medications shipped straight to your door. So no clinic visits, which means no hassle. And everything is secure. It's HIPAA compliant. It's pharmacist reviewed. You choose the medication, not an insurance company or an indoctrinated physician. Real healthcare freedom means you decide what's right for your body. It's time to put your medical freedom back in your hands. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz. Because you are part of this movement, use code Liz10 at checkout for an exclusive discount. It doesn't matter if you need medication today or you don't know when you'll need medication next. Visit their website so that you are familiar with All Family Pharmacy as your resource for your medical freedom. It's your health, should be your choice. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10. So former Democrat state senator from Ohio, Nina Turner, she identifies as a Democratic socialist, I have come to find out. She said that the murder of Irina Zarutska on the bus in Charlotte by DeCarlos Brown Jr., a deranged black man who stabbed her in the neck 3 times, she said that this is not about race because she said this definitively too. She said it is not a hate crime. Take a listen.
But this is about how we spend money in this country when it comes to people who have these types of propensities. The reason why we can laser focus on Brown in terms of mental health is based on what his mother said, based on the 911 call, and this was not a hate crime. We can racialize it if it was a hate crime, but this is not determined to be a hate crime. And the fact that black men are overrepresented in the prison system in the United States of America is a problem. That does not mean that we cannot deal with Brown. We are taking from, in this conversation, cheapening what happened to this young woman. And she was pretty and she was white. If she was ugly and white, would her life not matter just as much? This makes absolutely no sense, Chris. I am enraged by it. Do we let most mass murders are white men? Do we label and say that we want to lock up and kill all white men in the same manner that some on the extreme left and extreme right are betraying this? And Liz, you and I should have a sidebar conversation about this, because the way that this is being framed, and I'm open to it, is not the right framing. Chris, you are on it. Yes, he should be punished for this crime. The family should be lifted up. It should not be politicized in the way that it is being politicized. The system failed Zaruska, and the system failed all of us, and there is a way to get the fix, and justice will prevail in this case. Hopefully, this man did something heinous. He has the answer to this.
Okay. First of all, she said, Nina Turner said to me, Liz, you and I should sidebar. And Chris said at the end of the show, I'll connect you. And he did on email. He sent an email to Nina and to me, connecting us. And Nina did not reach out to me. She's welcome to. I'm happy to talk to anybody. She's welcome to come on the show. I'd love to have a longer form conversation with her about this. I'd love to see her reaction to Barack Obama talking about fatherlessness and how that leads to crime, and children who are raised in single parent homes, typically by single mothers, how they have mental health issues and they become career criminals and turn to drugs and have social issues like homelessness and depression and anxiety. I would love to hear her reaction to that. I would love to talk to her about why exactly she doesn't want any focus to be on putting the Black family back together, or putting the white family back together too, because both are a problem, although there's a more severe problem with the brokenness of the Black nuclear family. She's welcome to come on the show anytime, but I think she might have used that line just as a little distraction technique, so she didn't have to address my point on air when she had the chance to have the discussion with me. That's why you're on the show. You're on the show so you can talk about these things. So talk about them. Make your point. I'm here. I'm here to listen. I'm here to debate you. I'm here to make my points. But she did not reach out, although she's still welcome to at any time. Okay, she also used the term, by the way, overrepresented. Black men are overrepresented, and that's the exact same type of phrase as a disproportionate number of Black men are in prison. Well, if Black men are overrepresented in prison, it means that they are overrepresented in the number of crimes they commit. That's the problem. Not that they're overrepresented in prison. They're not put in prison because they're Black. They're not put in prison because there's this racial bias in our criminal justice system against Black men, where innocent Black men are put in prison and guilty white men are not. If you have proof of that, you better show it, because I'll stand right next to you and call that out if that's the case. But you never actually show any evidence that that's the case, because it's not true. So you use phrases like overrepresented and disproportionate to make it seem like there's racial bias in our criminal justice system, when really the racial bias in our criminal justice system is racial equity in criminal justice task forces that seek to reduce the number of Black men in prison, not by reducing the number of crimes committed by Black men, but just by letting Black men off easy because they're Black. Also, she claims that this crime against Irina Zarutska is not related to race, even though it is, because Brown was let out of prison 14 times thanks to Democrats who don't want Black men in prison because it doesn't make their statistics look good. So they let him off easy because of the color of his skin. But putting that aside for a second, a new video has surfaced of the crime being committed, the murder, and the aftermath of the murder of Irina Zarutska. And in this new video, DeCarlos Brown, after he has committed the murder, he's walking around with a knife in his hand, dripping blood. It's horrendous. He can be heard saying 2 different times, and I'm going to play this video, fair warning, it's grisly. It's not of the actual murder, but in the aftermath, he can be heard saying, "I got that white girl." Let's play that video.
But this is about...
We're going to bring that up in just a second. You have to watch closely because it's a little mumbly. It's a little low because of how the surveillance camera picks up DeCarlos Brown. But listen very closely. I'll point out when he says it, and there's very little argument, or at least no argument that I've heard that holds much water, arguing that this is not what he said. And if this is what he said, "I got that white girl," I think you're hard pressed, if you are Nina Turner, making a valid argument that this is not a hate crime, or that this has nothing at all to do with race. Spencer, do we have that video? All right, let's play that video. and watch very closely, and we'll point out the moment that DeCarlos Brown says, "I got that white girl," after he murdered Irina Zarutska. I got that white girl, he said. Did you hear that? You have to rewind that a little bit so we can hear that again. It's clear. It's clear as a bell. He committed a vicious murder. He stabbed Irina in the neck until she died. She looked up in surprise, reportedly. We haven't seen this part of the video because they haven't released the full video, and maybe now we know why. She looked up in surprise for 20 seconds, 30 seconds before she collapsed in a pool of blood on the floor and died. Bled out. FBI Director Kash Patel tweeted or posted on X earlier today and said the FBI has been investigating what happened on that bus since the day that it happened. So, with all due respect, State Senator Nina Turner, I think this does have to do with race. And I think this was a hate crime. But even if it wasn't a hate crime, it still has to do with the racialist policies of the Democrat Party. This story just became something completely different. So let's now talk about this identity of Nina Turner, a Democrat socialist. She's not just a former state rep. She's a Democratic socialist. And this perhaps makes more sense why she was so triggered when I brought up the brokenness of the Black family and repeated the same talking points that Barack Obama had offered our country a decade prior. The reason that Nina Turner was so triggered is because of the social implications of what it actually looks like or what it means to put the family back together. And again, this is Black families and white families. This is just putting the nuclear family back together. The implications of that would be promoting marriage between one man and one woman. The implications of that would be recognizing that a man and a woman are different and that men can't be women and women can't be men. The implications of that would also be properly ordering sexual activity, meaning discouraging sex before marriage and sex outside marriage and reserving sex for the sanctity of marriage. All things which are the enemy of the socialist ideology that she espouses. Socialists and communists and Marxists hate almost nothing more. Maybe they hate God more, but they hate almost nothing more than the nuclear family. I literally wrote a book about it, Hide Your Children, Exposing the Marxists Behind the Attack on America's Kids. In this book, I explore the root of why are we experiencing in our country this enormous effort, this deliberate, relentless assault on our nation's children. And what I found in my research, in my investigation, is I found that there are Marxist organizations, very powerful Marxist interests, who are attempting to destroy the civil institutions that form the building blocks of our country, because there is a Marxist by the name of Antonio Gramsci who wrote in his exploration of Marxist theory, he wrote that Marxist revolutions, when they're based on Karl Marx's theory that, the working class becomes, discontent and they overthrow the ruling class. When it's economic discontent, Marxist revolutions never work. It never actually works to transform a free people into a Marxist government. But Antonio Gramsci observed that when first the civil institutions in a country, so that would be the media, the education system, religion, the law, and the family, when they're assaulted, they're destroyed from within, then Marxism successfully topples a free government, and Marxism and communism can be opposed or can be imposed on the people. So when you think of the socialist ideology, which she has voluntarily attached to herself and her political career, when you think of what that means, socialism and Marxism and communism, when you think of strengthening the nuclear family, this is the opposite of what socialists want to do. This is the opposite of what Marxists and communists need to happen. If they want to impose Marxism on us, they have to destroy all these things that we want to put back together, because putting the nuclear family back together is how society thrives. So you put marriage back together between one man and one woman, you put gender back together, men are men and women are women, you put sex back together, and you have essentially protected the nuclear family from the assault that such socialists want to levy against it. So perhaps that is why she was so triggered, even though what I said was not even kind of controversial. It wasn't even kind of spicy. It wasn't bombastic in any way. There was actually something else I said in the show that I thought would get that kind of triggered reaction. I thought when I said there's systemic racism in our criminal justice system and it's aimed at white people, I thought that would trigger Chris Cuomo and Nina Turner, but they almost barely reacted to that. And it was the Black family, the brokenness of the Black family that really made Nina Turner freak out and melt down in that way. Also, a little behind the scenes story. When you're on these types of shows, you obviously are wearing an earbud so that you can communicate with the control room in the background. And typically the control room is quiet in your ear during when you're live on air, when you're engaging in these debates. But as you could see, especially those of you who watch the full segment, I don't typically interrupt on those shows. I make my point and I stand my ground when someone interrupts me if I have not completed saying my point. But I don't typically interrupt unless it's an appropriate point to say, but what about this? I don't interrupt to bulldoze someone else. And I know Chris Cuomo's the one, he's the director of the show. It's his show. He's the host. He's the talent. He can interrupt me all he wants. That's fine. But Nina Turner interrupted me in almost every comment that I had to make that she didn't like. And yet it was in my ear that Chris Cuomo's producer, while I was speaking, you have to wonder if this was intended to try to rattle me in some way, which it did not. In my ear, Chris Cuomo's producer was like, don't interrupt Nina, let Nina speak. And you have to wonder whether, and every time Nina interrupted me, if she also got a producer in her ear while live on TV telling her not to interrupt me. Somehow, if I were to make a bet on it, somehow I bet that she didn't. Somehow I bet that she didn't. But the reason, of course, that she was so triggered is because of the implications of putting the family back together. So I'm glad that we can bring this conversation to a forefront again. I've watched a little bit on X as this video has gone viral, almost 1 million views overnight. And this is a good thing. It's a really good thing to have this conversation in the forefront, because if we are going to fix our society, then we have to start with conversations that I guess people find to be uncomfortable. In the live chat, D. Betting says, public servants destroying us from the inside. Well, yes, because the policies, it's not just, when I talk about the social fabric or the Black family being destroyed, that's not just something that happened arbitrarily. It happened as a result. You have these drastic changes in the number of married Black adults and divorces and fatherlessness and out of wedlock births. The drastic change in the numbers from 1960 to now didn't just happen. We didn't just slide into this. It was a result of policies that incentivize and reward that, and a culture that encourages it. It's a result of a deliberate effort to break the Black family. And if we don't acknowledge the reality of the enemy that we face, then we will never be able to effectively fight against it. Gary Sealer in the live chat says they are indoctrinating through the schools, and it seems to be working with how many young people are embracing socialist communist ideology. Yes, you're exactly right. I often say, and this is a line that I say at live events when I'm asked questions and answer at the end, and this always gets a big laugh. People ask me about how to deal with the public school system and, whether I'm going to send my kids to public school. The answer to that is no. And how we deal with it, even if I'm not going to send my kids, how do we handle the public school being an indoctrination center? And I always say it's moments such as these that I'm so grateful that I'm not a politician, because I can take a position that's so extremely based, it's out of step with the majority of probably even the Republican electorate. But it's kind of what it means to be a thought leader, is you lead, your thoughts lead. Sometimes you're a little bit ahead of where the majority of the voting demographic is. And I say, I don't think that we should fix the public school system. I think we should abolish the public school system. We should just get rid of it. It doesn't serve it. What purpose does it serve? Is it supposed to result in children who are well academically formed? If so, it's just a failure, because public schools are turning out children who can't write, who can't read, who can't do math, who have no basic life skills. So if that's the purpose of the public school system, then it's just a failure. If it has an additional purpose for socialization, first of all, I don't know what socialization means. Does that mean the ability to communicate with your peers? Does that mean the ability to communicate and interact with people who are not just in, your same age in your classroom? Because if so, the public school system is also failing. The younger generations are so socially awkward and I say weird, they're just not competent at living life. It's failing there if the public school system's purpose is to create Americans, meaning indoctrinate children with American values or Christian values. It's failing there. And so you have to wonder, well, why do we have the public school system then? Is it just a big daycare center where parents can send their kids for free while they go to work? Because the net effect that public schools are having on our country is a negative one. It's having a negative impact on our country. It's a why do we have it? Do we just have it because we're used to it? Do we just have it because it seems radical to abolish it? Do we have it because we truly believe if not for the public school system, children wouldn't learn how to read? I don't believe that for a second. And so I always say I'm really happy that I'm not a politician because I can say this without the political blowback from my constituents who send their kids to public schools. But think about it. Chew on that for a little while and see if you can come up with a good answer of what are public schools actually accomplishing? What is their net impact on society? And is it a positive one? And if not, why do we have that system? Okay. Oh, by the way, Gary's point that he made about schools indoctrinating young people into being socialist and communist, not only is that a good point, just theoretically, it's actually evidenced by the latest poll out of New York City. The mayoral race, this new poll out today, Zohran Mamdani he has a huge lead in the race for mayor of New York City. He's, of course, running against Eric Adams and Chris Cuomo's brother, Andrew Cuomo, and the Republican. And his lead has increased because of his vocal support, his quote unquote affordability platform, which is promising free stuff, and has splintered his opposition. If Eric Adams dropped out, that would tighten the race, between he and Andrew Cuomo. But I got to tell you, I cannot bring myself, as much as I enjoy debating Chris Cuomo, I cannot bring myself to root in any way, shape, or form for his brother. His brother was the governor of New York when they locked down, when they had vax mandates. He put the old people in the nursing homes. Yeah, you're not going to get any kind of support or encouragement from me for that man to be in charge of New York City. But the point that I'm trying to make is the reason Zohran Mamdani has such a big lead in New York City is not because he's hiding his socialist views, his communist views, his Marxist views. It's because he's being so open about them. And the voters of New York City are the young people. And when I say young people, I don't mean they're all young right now, but when they were young, they were put through the school system that indoctrinated them and turned them into socialists and communists and Marxists. And so now that they're adults, I think it was 20%. So 1 out of 5 voters in New York City under the age of 50 is a college graduate from one of these universities that's just an indoctrination center. So of course they're going to vote for him. Of course Zohran Mamdani is an open Marxist who's now in the lead. He's going to be the mayor of New York City because these schools are not just ruining individuals' minds and souls, they're transforming our country. So we better do something. And, I think my idea is best. I think that if we abolish the public school system funding, whether it's research grants, whether it's to fund labs, whether it is federally subsidized student loans, he shouldn't let a dime of federal funding go to any college or university, public or private, that serves as an indoctrination center for anti-American subversive ideologies like socialism and Marxism and communism. Oh, the actual numbers. Someone's asking about the actual numbers. Mamdani is at 46%. Cuomo has 24%. Curtis Sliwa, that's the Republican, has 15%. And Eric Adams has 9%. And I know a lot of people are like, will they drop out? Will Eric Adams